Hello and welcome to the D.FINED Engagement BookCast. My name is D.FINED. I'm happy you're here today. Today we're meeting with a special woman. Her name is Teresa O'Kane, and she wrote the book Safari Jema, A Journey of Love and Adventure from Casa Blanca to Cape Town. Teresa, I'm a lucky guy to have you on this edition of the D.FINED Engagement BookCast. I so look forward to our chat. Thank you for being here. Hello, my friends. This is D.FINED, and I am the guy behind this bookcast, the D.FINED Engagement BookCast. And what I like to do is talk to fascinating people, learn a little bit about them and their books, and share what I'm learning and share what they have to say and like all that stuff behind being an author of interesting books. So that's what this is about. And today I have Teresa O'Kane as the author of Safari Jema, A Journey of Love and Adventure from Casa Blanca to Cape Town. And welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. I'm going to read your kind of a little bit of your bio from the back of the book, if you don't mind.
Sounds good.
Teresa writes about travel and adventure from her home in California and around the globe. In Safari Jema, she and her husband pick up their dream to see Africa top to bottom. She has traveled to all 7 continents and to more than 100 countries. Teresa is currently finalizing plan for another expedition to Africa in 2013. You may read more travel stories at teresaokane.blogspot.com. And Boots, oh, you're going to have to say that to me, okay?
Oh, you can find the link at the blog spot.
Okay.
So you don't have to read that.
It's another blog, right? It's about the bridge.
It's one of my to-do lists is to merge those together.
Get on it, will you?
Yeah, I know.
Safari Jema is the Indie Book Award winner for Best Memoir. So how cool is that?
No one's more surprised than me.
Here it is, Safari Jema. And Safari Jema means what?
Good journey.
Good journey. So the other thing I want to say about your background and mine is that we grew up together. Like I've been reacquainted with you in the past 6 months, and we grew up together in the same general area of San Jose, California. We ended up going to the same private Catholic school together. You were a year behind me. And I was telling Teresa just earlier before we started rolling the camera, how she was such a happy kid. I just remember her being, you know, overall smiling about life all the time. And that just memory came to me, and you say you wake up happy pretty much every morning. So I my memory might have been working for a change.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I'm very grateful for it, but it's, you know, there was a pretty well-known publisher who read. It's kind of a long story, but
that's okay.
After we did this trip, Safari Jema. I wrote the book just for Scott. I had no intention of ever publishing a book.
And Scott is your husband.
No thoughts of that. I've always loved to write, but I never published anything. So I wrote it. I gave it to him, and he's a pretty harsh critic, but he loved it. And he said, "You should publish this." I was like, well, in the meantime, we were doing talks at REI about 10 months overland in Africa. And it was very well received. They told us, bigger crowds than they'd ever had. And it went very well. And in the audience one day was a man who had just finished writing his book. He and his family took his kids out of school and traveled around the world. And he came up to me after and he said, "Your story is so incredible." And during the talk, I would read from my journal and that's kind of what's in the book.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm working with this publisher, well-known publisher, and I think he'd like to meet you. Well, long story short, like I said, never intended of publishing a book at all. It's just for Scott. Well, this publisher calls me.
Yeah.
And he says, I heard about you. I'd like to read your manuscript, your story. I send it to him. We work together on it. He's incredible. He gives me these, I mean, it was like, I couldn't believe it. And so, and he gave me great suggestions, especially the chapter about Ethiopia and stuff like that. And then he said, you know, I'd like to publish this, but this gets to where I'm pretty happy all the time.
Okay.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Because he said, I'd like to publish this, but I'd like you to make it more. He said, you know, didn't you and Scott ever have some big arguments, and didn't some just really bad things happen and this and that? And I said, yeah, some bad things happened, you know, but we dealt with it and stuff like that. And I said, do you mean make it more Eat, Pray, Love, which was quite the book at the time? And he said, exactly. And I said, I'm not, I said, I wake up happy every morning. I told him that. And I said, and he said, well, it's kind of insulting today, or sort of, but he said, you'll never make it in chick lit.
Chick lit, as if it was going to be.
Never, yeah. And so I went home and I talked to Scott about it. I'm like, I got this, you know, offer. You know, well-known publisher, travel publisher, published my, but he wants me to change it, you know. And Scott said, would you feel comfortable? You know, I said, no.
So you got another publisher.
I turned it down.
Yeah.
I turned it down.
Well, good for you, because it's definitely not chick lit. I mean, so good, hats off, because this is not a book.
Yeah.
And I don't read chick lit. I don't even know what it would. That's a gum brand, isn't it? Chiclets. But anyway, there's no sense of this is a book for women. It's just it's awesome. So
most of my readers are men.
Oh,
most
how about
of the
that?
Readers are men.
How about that? Well, the women are missing out. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Tell me about your traveling companion, your adventure in life at your side is Scott, your husband, and people will pick up in this book that you guys get around, you go places, and you weave that in a little bit, because sometimes you'll tell a story of you and Scott in another place, but you're there to make a point about it. So that's lovely. But you guys are adventurers, and it's not vacation for you. Tell us a little bit about what you did to prepare for leaving, and how long were you in Africa again? And how did that work out? Like, how does someone just like pick up and go to Africa for 10 months out of their life? I want to kind of hear. And you do it, I'm not going to say you do it a lot, but you do. Maybe you do it a lot. And I want to hear about what you have to say about those decisions you made with Scott to be an adventurer.
Well, Doug, that's pretty much the essential question, because it started on a blind date. I was 18 years old. Blind date with Scott. And it was a dance. And instead of dancing and chatting with the college friends, we went out by the pool it was held at a hotel. And all we did was talk about traveling the world.
Wow.
Like, it's exactly what he wanted to do. And it's exactly what I wanted to do. And it was unlike any date I'd ever had before, any conversation I'd had before. It was literally, I mean, we just sat there for hours talking about all the places we wanted to see in the world. And so we were together after that. I mean, pretty much that was it. And then we got married after a while, just after maybe a year. And we started a business. And we realized that is not, because we wanted to earn enough money to travel. But we couldn't go anywhere. So we started our own sort of construction business and fixing up houses and stuff like that. So every time we'd have a successful project, we would pick out a place from this big box. We started a file, but we would just throw travel ideas into it. If we'd read an article, we'd tear it out of the newspaper and throw that in the box. And then we'd pick something and we'd go on a trip. And they were long trips. And then when we bought a house, we'd lease our house out and go on the trip. So it was often, we realized, I mean, I majored in economics in college. So I realized if you travel longer, it's cheaper.
Oh.
You know, that airfare is spread out over 12 months instead of, it's expensive to fly to Africa and fly around Africa and stuff like that. So we love, it's a lifestyle. It's not, it's part of our life. It's not a trip like you mentioned. It's not just one trip. And the more you do travel, the more you want to travel, the more places you want to see. And so often people will say, just my neighbor just yesterday said, you've been everywhere. And it's not like that. It's every time you go somewhere, you meet someone who's talking about somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like Mongolia, have you been there? Or Iceland or Finland or wherever. So there's lots more travel to do.
Yes.
And we organized our lives very, with intention, so that we could do a project and we could, when the project was done, if it was successful, if we sold a house, we could go on a trip, and be real free. And we're both the same way. We don't buy new cars. We're not real like consumers of much else but travel. So it's very focused, and we meet a lot of people traveling who fell in love, got married, and didn't discuss things like this. And it turns out that like their husband hates to travel. And so we've met more women in tough places, Africa and parts of Asia and Laos, and they're traveling alone because their husbands, they don't want to travel. So it's kind of, I'm glad. I feel so lucky.
Yeah, you are.
That I feel very lucky that I have somebody who, wants to do what I want to do.
Big time. That's beautiful. That's a wonderful story. Just how you got, the stars aligned that night, right? Hey, did you ever go like, because I'm getting the gist of the box. I'm getting the gist of the box. And I just spoke to another author, and I just released our bookcast today. And she, in her own way, had her own box, but it was to the point of she had projects and things that she wanted to do. It wasn't about travel, but it was about things that she had to get accomplished, sort of. So she had to cut back on her work life because she wanted to have more balance in her life, and life isn't all about work. So she made a box and just dipped into it after the other over time. And on her list, in her box, was clean the garage, clean the attic, go take a class in writing. They're very practical things. But so, did you ever pick something out of the box? Go, no, I'm diving in again, or was it always just like, we picked this, we're going. This is where we're going, or was it more of a, I don't want to go there now? So
it was more of deciding where are we going to start, because we always buy one-way ticket.
All right.
So if we're going to go to Africa, we buy a one-way ticket. And then from there, we could be coming home via Australia.
Gotcha.
It just depends how long we get to be away. But this journey, this is interesting that you asked that, because we had finished a project, and we were kind of in a mode of saving money so we could do a really long trip and stuff like that. And we said, finally, let's just go. We finished the project, and it doesn't have to be, we know how to travel on a budget.
Yeah.
So, okay, where shall we start? And that's when this is December 2004, this journey starts. And we nearly started in Thailand or Sri Lanka. Those were our two choices. And then this Africa opportunity, overland opportunity came up.
Yeah.
But if you remember, December 2004, our favorite place in Thailand, Khao Lak, was demolished by the tsunami.
Gotcha.
So we often thought about that. What if we'd picked Thailand instead of, so it did, who knows?
You would have been there. You would have been there.
We would have been there.
When the
we would have been there.
Hit.
We would have been right there because we were only, 2 weeks into the, not even.
Oh, gotcha.
Maybe a week and a half.
Yeah.
So we would have been there instead of in Morocco. We were in Morocco.
So,
but back to your, can I just say something about what you were just talking about, your author you interviewed about work is not everything and having to have a balance and stuff like that. Well, I used to be a lot more A-type personality. And when, so while I wanted to see the world, I loved school. I did well in school. I had plans to work for, some economist and I was at school at Santa Cruz University because I worked for 4 years and then I went back to school to get my degree. And Scott came home and he said, how about we buy a boat and sail to Hawaii?
Yes. Yeah.
So long story short, we did that. But the whole time, it took 21 days. And I'm just like, then we get there and we're sailing around Hawaii and it's fantastic. And the whole experience is new and fantastic. But I was 23, I think, at the time. And I was concerned that I'm losing my edge. I'm not going to be, no one's going to want me to work for them because I'm this nomad and stuff like that. And Scott convinced me, that he showed me how much more there is to life.
That's wonderful. I'm interviewing an author. He's one of my kind of business thinker, writer gurus of mine. And his name's Tom Peters. And he used to talk about people's resumes. He used to say, don't worry about a slice in your revenue that you can't account for because that should get them curious instead of looking down on you. You could say, I did this while I was not, quote unquote, working. The hell with people's judgments about you and your choices, So anyway.
That's pretty enlightened.
Oh, yeah, he is. He's 77 now or something like that, but he's still writing books. And I get him for a half an hour in a couple of weeks. So that's
wow, that's wonderful.
He's a guru of mine. So I'm going to try not to gush too long because I know we got things to talk about, he and I.
Well, on that, a friend of ours, he said we inspired him. So he worked his whole life from college and got a job in the insurance industry. And he worked and was with the same company for a long time. And we did this trip. We backpacked around the world and we inspired him. And so he quit. He quit and he went around the world and he came back and he thanked us and cursed us because it took him so long for someone to hire him.
Oh, wow.
Now, this wasn't today. This was about 20 years ago,
It's probably still the same way, I guess, at times, because people, when you're buttoned down and you have your own, model of how people should live their lives and how most people making those selections would never do what he did or never do what you did. So they automatically think something's wrong with you.
Right.
That's just my judgment.
And so, no, you got it. And then he would think, oh, I got the job because the interviewer, he was so interested and he was asking questions about his around the world journey and this and that.
Oh,
but he wouldn't get an offer because, well, maybe you want to disappear again.
yeah, there's that. There's that. There's that in the back of their mind.
It's expensive to hire a new executive.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So anyway.
So Safari Jema, you guys went, your whole plan was to start in Morocco, right? And you got on this group, I'm not going to even call it a tour because it's a overland excursion, like big time. If there's a word, you got on this big old machine of a large I don't know if it was Rusty, but he had the driver, he had a lot of work to do on that machine. And you guys sat in this thing, what kind of, how many people did it hold?
Well, it could have held 18 people. Wow. I think there was 10 of us. That was part of the problem. And it was a very interesting concept. It could have worked, really. How did we hear about, I think we heard this, I don't know how we heard of it. Scott's really good at finding unique things. Anyway, this Australian mechanic was being interviewed because he was talking about his dream. So he had been an overland truck driver on giving people tours, taking 20-somethings, 30-somethings around Africa. And so he wanted to build a truck and sort of sell seats. Yeah. And have it be where the participants in the expedition, we would decide the itinerary, we decide where to go, when we go, everything, like together. And he would always say, as a family. That should have been our first warning.
And he was the dad, right?
Well, no, that would have probably been helpful. He just wasn't ready, and he'd already signed on quite a few Australians and British people, and they were anxious to go. They quit their jobs. They were anxious to get going, and he wasn't done with the truck. So they started actually helping him construct the truck in England. And we were meeting the group in Africa. And as soon as we got there, because they pressured him to leave before everything was done. And he hadn't sold enough seats, and there really wasn't enough money to get to South Africa.
Yeah, from Morocco. And that, by the way, people, our listeners and our viewers, that's the whole potato. They go from top to bottom of Africa, the continent of Africa. And that was the plan.
That was the plan. But it didn't work out that way because it's interesting, because in my first draft of this book, the book I wrote for Scott, the part with this overland truck driver was about a page and a half. I think it was 7 weeks we were with
him and the group.
That group, before the whole trip blew up and everyone left in Ghana. So that's on West Africa. We just transited a few countries: Morocco, Western Sahara, Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia, Mali, and then we were in Ghana. And anyway, when this publisher said, I want to read your manuscript, and he read this page and a half, and he said, this sounds interesting.
Yes.
He goes, I want to hear more about this group, this dynamic, and this mechanic.
Oh yeah. And
so that's how, And so it's an amusing story. It wasn't the safest thing in the world to do, it turned out, because he was quite reckless, and he was so stressed, and it could have worked, but he was just so stressed out. And
well, I didn't pick up from the book, and that's my fault, but what I'm hearing today is that the mechanic, and that's what you call him throughout the book, the mechanic.
He was a great mechanic.
Yeah,
he was a wonderful mechanic.
Because he built this thing from the ground up, that vehicle.
Well, you know, pretty much. He bought an old lorry, and he bought like a lot of spare parts because he intended on selling those in South Africa to kind of make the journey economically worthwhile for him.
So you're in this.
We had to use most of the parts.
Yeah,
for 7 weeks.
That's another thing. Sometimes in the book, people, and by the way, hold up your book again, because we got to remind people why we're talking here. This is Safari Jema. It's Teresa's first book. She wrote it as a love letter and a journal for her husband. It wasn't planned to be. Her plan was not to publish it, but it is a journey of love and adventure from Casa Blanca to Cape Town. So that's what we're talking about. It's your first book, and you have a couple. You've already published another book for another time in Africa, and I hope we can talk about that after I read it. You're finishing up another book, another Africa story, and so anyway, I love. Go ahead.
Well, this journey is what prompted us finally to we bought our own vehicle in Africa.
That's right.
So we buy this old Land Rover in 2011. And that's a whole nother amazing, really amazing journey.
Oh, I can't wait.
But because of this,
yes,
like the entire time, 11 months, we kept saying it would be great if we had our own wheels, because it's hard to get from A to B. After we left the truck, many people that were on the trip, great folks, by the way, we're still friends with everybody today. A lot of people went home. I think 2 women stayed, and they went to Malawi and did dive courses and things like that. And we ended up transiting over to Ethiopia and going down the east coast of Africa with backpacks, bush taxis, and so forth and so on. And it's tough. It's not easy getting from A to B.
Well, I wanted to bring this up. A couple of things that when I was reading the book, I go, for one, there was a part in your book that you talked about going from, I think, a city in Ghana to what a cruise line would call an excursion. But this was 3 or 4 days to get there, to go see something. And that just blows my mind, that Africa is so huge that in the country of Ghana, you'd go 3 days traveling just to get somewhere. Like we don't think that way here. It's so amazingly huge. Is that right? Is that my takeaway? It's just amazingly huge. It's not a typical, you live in San Jose, you got to go, down to LA. You go to LA 5 hours, right?
Yeah. Or you just hop in a plane, or you have to, it taught patience. You must be patient. You getting upset doesn't help anything or anybody. Yeah. So you just go with the flow. Buses break down. The bush taxi's full. It passes you by. You have to wait another 3 hours or 3 days.
That's a whole other story. And bush taxis. Yeah, I looked them up. I Googled them. It's like, this is what looks like pretty much a broken down, maybe a 5-seat car. Yeah. That they throw everything on top of it, and then you take off. There's nothing about a taxi. Our view of a taxi. I don't
know if people can see this image.
They probably
this is a typical bush taxi.
Yeah.
And they were actually transporting potatoes.
And it's primarily how you get around. Like, you guys got your own vehicle, but that's how people get around. You're counting on, okay, we'll get a bush taxi from here to there.
Yeah. And this fellow, he was transporting potatoes, and we said, could we get a ride?
Yeah.
And we were on that it was all day. And I sat in the center seat. Scott was in the back on top of the potatoes. And I had to hold both of the doors shut across the shoulders of the two Africans. And yeah, it had no reverse gear. It was just, but that's a bush taxi, and you're grateful for it. You're grateful. And gosh, the people in Africa and everywhere, people are good. I mean, that's where I come from.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I kind of want the big picture thing, but I want to touch on a couple of things that, if you're willing, maybe to read a part or two from the book.
Sure.
There's that part where why don't you just riff on animals? How you loved being near animals, what you experienced with them, and especially that part. It's page 207 to 208, and it has to do with elephants and lions. And you say such a beautiful thing at the end about how happy it made you that day to experience that. You tracking where I'm talking about?
Yes, and I do love animals. I have always loved animals. And then when you go to Africa and you're around African animals, it's a whole nother level. And, I hope that some listeners do end up going to Africa. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we did, because we spent so much time there and we wanted to be around, the animals are wild, but we wanted to be around them safely. So we took a ranger guide course, couple of months long course in South Africa, where we learned all about animal behavior, elephants, lions, leopard, honey badgers, all the things, hippos. Hippos and Cape buffalo kill more people than, it's not lions. It's the hippo that they're so territorial. They'll just come and chomp you if you're anywhere in their territory.
My gosh.
Or the Cape buffalo. So we wanted to learn all about that. And that's an important thing to do. But just doing that, I appreciate them all the much more. And we're in their territory. And so you start from respect. And just like anywhere you go, when you travel, you should respect the people and the animals and their culture and their way of life. And that includes the animals. It's, So, and this was in 2005 in Zimbabwe. We, me and another fellow, Irish fellow who was, is that one? Oh, gosh, I mix up that. Anyway, I had an opportunity to go and walk with lions, 2005. And they were young lions, juvenile lions. And we did that. And, I got to hold a baby lion, and it was just, overcome. Now, what do I say? I feel very guilty about that whole experience, because how you go through life and you learn more about, like, everyone's learning about racism right now. Everyone's learning about lots of things right now. Well, not the next trip to Africa, but the next trip to Africa, when I was doing the ranger course, I learned that these sort of walking with lion situations never occurred to me to ask, well, what happens to the lions when they grow up? Well, a lot of these lions get sold to canned hunting operations.
Oh, so they're set up to be shot, basically.
They're set up. They're not afraid of humans.
Oh.
So I'm actually horrified that I did that, but I'm saying it now because I want to educate people.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea to be around wild animals. There's the things in the Caribbean where you can, a dolphin will come up and kiss you and things like this. Now, dolphins don't want to do that. They're sort of made to do that. So And riding elephants. Elephants aren't made to be ridden on, you know.
Yeah.
Things like that. So it's not a good idea.
Yeah, see, that's interesting from your perspective now. And you've aged, you know, so to speak, and you've gone to different trips, you've learned more. And now it's like
I love animals so much. I don't want to touch them.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you mind just reading like 207 to basically it's about 2 paragraphs, Tris, till the last word is far on 208. Excuse me. Yeah.
And where do you want me to start on 207?
The very last paragraph.
Scott was not yet rhino weary. So he'd gone off to try to find, there was a sighting of a black rhino, I think it was, and it was very rare. So he went off to do that. And I stayed back in the tent, and I was the lucky one.
Okay.
Scott was not yet rhino weary, so off he went for more adventure, and I was left alone in the field in the tent, contentedly reading. Then the best thing happened. I heard a rumble. I unzipped the tent to find a man and an elephant standing not 4 feet from me. The man was talking to the elephant in a gentle voice and feeding it some dry mashed grain by hand. I climbed out of the tent and asked how he had met the elephant. He told me it was an orphaned as a baby, and he had always taken care of it. Would you like to feed her? He said. It's okay, you can touch her. Would I ever? I took a handful of grain and placed it deep inside the elephant's mouth, as the man had done. Then I touched her trunk, her ears, her body, and her tail. I even got to touch the bottom of her feet. I got to touch her all over. It was wonderful. I feel bad about it now. Shortly, the elephant began to move away. So I thanked the man and returned to the tent, utterly content and glad I didn't go on another rhino hunt. About an hour later, Scott returned. They never did spot the black rhino. Just before dusk, we were driven to the home of you want me to keep going?
Yes, this last paragraph.
Before dusk, we were driven to the home of a farmer who had raised 2 orphaned lions since birth. So that does happen. You know, baby lions, they're found, they're orphaned, animals are orphaned, and people, Africans, they just take care of them. They were too big to be allowed in the house any longer, so they were housed in a large enclosure in the yard. The owner let us in the enclosure so we could pet them. The lions had just eaten an impala leg, or something that looked like it might once have been an impala leg, and were now intently watching a pesky warthog that taunted them mercilessly from the safety of the other side of the fence. I walked over to the lion and gave him a good rub. He immediately rolled over to have me do his tummy. If I hadn't noticed the sharpness of the lion's claws, I would have been in that Sirabina River meditative state once again. I was close to it. I got to touch an elephant and a lion all in one day. It was the most blissful day of my life so far. And that was true. It was utter bliss. And this isn't similar to the other situation I was talking about. Nobody was going to kill this elephant, or it wasn't going to be put in a situation where it would be shot by a hunter. And nobody was, this farmer was going to take care of these lions for the rest of their life. There's all sorts of amazing stories about people who have lions. There was a man we met who had 1 arm, and you know, you gotta ask, well, what happened? You know, this is Africa. People have been chomped by alligators and they've lost limbs here and there. Well, he had a couple of lions, and he had a lion that he'd raised, same thing. It was orphaned, and he raised it. And he had 2 lions, and one of his staff somehow put the lion back in the wrong cage. And as he did every night, he went to, you know, pet his lion goodnight, and it was the wrong lion. He lost his arm.
Oh my.
Yeah. There's
even
lots of stories like that.
your little description of you petting the lions, it amazes me, because we have cats, and we have 4 cats actually, but there's one that he's especially lovable. Like, he loves to come up to you, and he's the only lap cat we have. But pretty much, frequently he's laying before, as I'm heading off to bed, he's laying on a chair, and I'm petting him for the last time of the day. And he kind of rolls over and offers his belly.
Yeah.
But almost every time he'll start grabbing, it's like, here, but so I have to think, man, that would be the fact that you did that, like kind of rub that lion, like, man, our cat we wouldn't get away with it with our cat. But
no.
Somehow, that lion was tame enough or something that just didn't want to hurt you.
I was very eager. Scott did not even come in the enclosure with me. And he was like, oh my God, he was a bit nervous. But now we have a cat.
Yeah.
You can rub her tummy for 30 minutes and she just loves it.
Yeah.
But by then, I mean, I can kind of read the signs of an animal.
Mm-hmm.
Now today, I wouldn't even do it. I wouldn't even do it.
It's just that you've just changed.
Yeah.
You've just you have a totally, and who would have thunk, that you would be at that point in your life and in your adventures that you've just I don't know what it is. What's the word you use when you just are more aware of the reality?
Well, the 20-somethings call it being woke, so you learn.
Yeah.
You learn and so now I choose to observe.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite thing is to sit at a water hole. I could sit there for hours and just observe the animals and take photos. And that's enough.
That's good enough.
It's totally enough.
Nice.
And I love tracking. So sometimes we can track for hours and we'll be tracking a rhino or a lion and we'll never find them.
Yeah.
And I'm just as satisfied. Like, it's just so cool to follow their tracks and see, what they did here. And here they took a little dirt bath and here they stopped and got some water. And I don't know, I love it.
And you learned how to track at your school, huh?
In the course, we learned, and that is wonderful because we get to a campsite and immediately the first thing we do is Scott and I always look situational awareness.
Yes.
Check our surroundings and then look and see what's been there. It's always Janet. They're always there, a little small cat-like animal. And impala and whatever. And sometimes often hyena and things like that. So we know what they are. And baboon, which are not great to have around when you're camping, but
what, do they want to bother you?
Sometimes, yeah.
Or they're loud? They keep you up at night or something? Or?
No, they could be aggressive, so they're
You're in there. Yeah, you're in there.
They're huge, and they have quite large fangs and so and they're used to people.
What would be one story from the book that you want to convey? If it's a story or if it's just an overall the zeitgeist of that book for you and what you what do you want to say about, we're going to kind of come to an end here because I don't want to keep you all day, but how would you synthesize, your experience? And I love how you put that Africa, it's almost like love, hate, not hate, but it's diverse in the extremes. Like there's extreme beauty, and then you see humanity in some sort of extreme of poverty and that kind of thing. So
it's the most real place I've ever been. We've been to over 100 countries.
You've been everywhere. Come on.
No, we haven't been everywhere. But I think my favorite chapter, if somebody wanted to just read one chapter, if they read the last chapter called Being Grateful, because, I think that's where I express gratitude for being in Africa, knowing a little bit more about what goes on in Africa. Africa's, I hope more people go. It can be safe. There's nothing bad happened to us in 11 months, going from top to bottom until Johannesburg, you know, and that was unfortunate, but big city, common thing. Crime does happen. But
Scott got mugged, folks. That's just
yeah, he got mugged.
He got roughed up, mugged.
Yeah. So, and but because he had spent 11 months transiting from the top to the bottom of Africa, he you know, it was terrifying. It was horrible. Yeah. But he said, you know, it wasn't a hate crime, or he said, Tris, it was a crime of opportunity. You know, there's people are desperate. A lot of people flood. They come from all different countries, men looking for a job, and there's no work. And so there was just an opportunistic robbery.
Sure.
You know?
That's pretty much how.
So, but he got right back on the horse. He said, let's go to Victoria Falls.
So you're in Cape Town now. You're at the very tip of Africa, and the adventure is coming to a close. And I just loved hearing that you guys decided to take a ship home. Yeah. You know, you cruised
best
home.
Thing ever.
Yeah. Oh, that was very cool to hear that's how it ended. You had some time to decompress and move back.
And it was, talk about culture shock, because you know, we flew to Rome to get the ship, and we had our backpacks, and we, like I said, we've been backpacking overland for a month. We were tidy, but things were worn, you know, and we took public transportation to get to the ship, and we walked down into the port, and we walked down, and there's the ship, and we're directed over to a kind of a shabby tent by ship staff. You guys go over there. And so we went over there and thought, this is weird. I mean, we hadn't been on a cruise ship really before that. And so we went in there, and we're kind of looking at each other, and they're giving us orders, put your packs over there. And we're still standing there. And then the guy slowly turned around. He said, aren't you crew? And we're like, no, we're passengers. And he's like, oh my God. And so they directed us over to the other tent, which was very nice, with champagne and people. But I wouldn't let anyone take my backpack, because the whole time in Africa, I never let my backpack out of my sight.
Well, that's it.
And it was absolute culture shock.
Yeah, you went from the help to the helped.
Yeah.
You know? So that's another thing that amazed me, Teresa, is this whole idea is you had all your worldly belongings that you needed to traverse Africa, and it was basically on your back. So the backpack went with you everywhere pretty much, and you even had a tent. Did you have two tents?
Yeah.
You had
one tent.
One tent, and someone
we
had
bought
to carry
the tent in Ethiopia.
A
tiny tent, yeah.
So that's amazing to me too, that you put your life into, you know, what is it, maybe 4 feet by 2 feet or something, as far as walking
very
around
small
with it.
backpacks.
And so you had to, you know, you guys are experts at this.
I'm kind of a pain in the ass. I travel really light. It bothers my friends because, you know, I have done a few girls, you know, women's trips, and I've just come with a small carry-on bag, and I like to travel light.
You know, this is nothing. This 3-week thing, well, we took 11 months in Africa, so what?
Yeah, layering is the key.
Yes. So I want to thank you again for the adventure that I got to share with you. This is a marvelous book. Yell it out again, will you, Teresa? Yell it out again.
Sorry?
Yell it out, the title and the subtitle.
Safari Jema, The Journey of Love and Adventure from Casa Blanca to Cape Town. This
is her first book. She has another book that's been published. What's the title of that, Teresa?
This is My Life with Ndoto. And Ndoto is the name of our 43-year-old Land Rover that we bought in Cape Town. Ndoto means, it's Swahili for dream. So I'm pretty obvious, aren't I?
Yes.
Anyway, this is exploring Africa in a 40-year-old Land Rover. And
just the two of you.
We put about 50,000 kilometers traveling around.
More stories.
Africa.
More stories. And then you're finishing up another book about Africa. And then at the very end here, I want you to tell us what you think your next book after that's going to be, because I have a feeling. Just tell them what you're doing now with your husband in the United States.
Yeah, so we're about to rejoin our little, show you a picture.
Yes.
Our little tugboat named Green Eyes. It's a 26-foot tugboat, and it's tiny. And we are doing something called the Great Loop, which is a 6,000-mile journey around the eastern part of the United States and Canada. And it's on rivers, lakes, goes through the Great Lakes, rivers, canals, the intracoastal waterway. And we have done part of it. We've done Lake Michigan, and we've done some rivers in Tennessee. The boat is now in Fairhope, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
There was a tornado watch yesterday for hours in Fairhope, Alabama. So we weren't sure we were going to have a boat this morning when we woke up, but it's fine. They sent us photos. She's fine and ready to go. And we'll rejoin the boat in May and carry on. And the journey takes over a year. Yeah. So we think we'll do this in parts. So we did 6 months. We've done 6 months of it last year. During the pandemic, I have to recommend being on a boat. It was, we were a little bit nervous when we first started, but it was a great way to social distance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And felt so lucky, because we got to see new vistas every day. So it's so important for your brain, I think. I mean, I noticed it when I got home and we were once again in lockdown here in California. And I was like, what is wrong with me? I had to go for a drive. I had to see some different wide vistas.
You really were lucky, blessed. You really were, because, not who could say that they could just, be out and about and seeing new things every day, going down, like you said, different vistas. You'd see all kinds of stuff, but everybody else, like the vast majority of us, are at home.
It was,
and that's amazing. That's a beautiful thing. So you're going to have a book out of that too.
Probably.
I think so.
Probably. We felt so stupid because we bought the boat in January, flew home from Texas where we bought the boat, and here's the headlines. Here's a pandemic. And we knew what that meant because we'd been in Africa during Ebola outbreaks and this and that. And so we thought, oh no, here we've just bought a boat and we can't go anywhere. But we waited until in June and they relaxed some restrictions. We quickly went and joined the boat and took off.
To our listeners and our people watching, there are so much more in this book. We just touched on a few highlights, if you call them that. But there's Teresa and her husband getting sick, like really, really sick for a couple of weeks. Teresa got sick before getting really, really sick with her husband. There are places that they go and pitch their tent in a tree to see the animals. There's just so much cool stuff. You get the gist of their relationship and how much I think you both must be extremely learning how to take it as it comes, because I can't imagine being in let's just say the first guy's truck for days on end. And are you able to read? So all that stuff, it's amazing. It's an amazing story. I'm so grateful that you took the time to talk to me about this. And I really hope people get the book, because I'm going to, in the show notes and all that, I'll put a link to Amazon.com.
Thank you.
And I'll put a link to your blog, and you keep up with your blog about what you guys are doing now and with the boat and things like that. So it's been just a pleasure.
Oh, it's great to see you. Great to talk to you.
Look at us. We were kids together. Look at this.
I know.
All right. Hey, hold on just for 1 minute, but for right now, I'm going to say goodbye to our guests and our listeners. And this is the Defined Engagement BookCast. And I was with Teresa Kane, the author of Safari Jema, A Journey of Love and Adventure from Casa Blanca to Cape Town. Thanks, Teresa. See you down the road.
Thanks.
The Chief Culture Officer at 15.5, his name is Shane Metcalf. He'll be my next guest on the Defined Engagement BookCast. Listen to more BookCasts at www.anchor.fm/Doug-Fine. And if you'd like to visit my company's website, the D.FINED Performance Solutions website, go to www.DougJFine.com. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you come back for more, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks again. Bye-bye.